Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving into some pretty intense but honestly fascinating territory today. We're going to unpack how one profoundly visceral, deeply personal childhood ordeal actually shaped a macro-level critique of how our entire society handles pain. It's like a giant puzzle, connecting Kyle MacLean Smith's localized trauma to a massive sociological framework. Now, since we're navigating the emotionally heavy waters of childhood trauma today, here is our roadmap to keep us on track. We'll start with the ecosystem of avoidance, move into the grass allergy ordeal, then sadism disguised as discipline, followed by suppressed boundaries and leaky energy, and finally, confronting the trauma loop.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the ecosystem of avoidance, which is a major societal symptom.
Take a look at this quote. It brilliantly captures an insight from a colleague of Kyle's. When we're confronted with raw, unfiltered suffering, human nature basically dictates this involuntary psychological reflex, right? We literally look away. The mind simply tries to protect itself from the discomfort.
So, that brings up a really vital question we need to keep in our back pockets before we examine Kyle's specific trauma. If it's a natural, hardwired reflex for one person to look away, what happens when an entire society does this all at once?
Well, the sources actually term this consequence the ecosystem of avoidance. It's basically a toxic societal setup where deep, systemic pain is constantly ignored, all because of that instinctive reflex to escape another suffering. And the kicker? Because people are constantly turning away, underlying injustices and abusers are allowed to thrive completely unchecked.
Moving on to Section 2, the grass allergy ordeal. This is the root cause of it all.
Just listen to these raw words for a second. This absolutely anchors us in the sheer physical and emotional suffocation of the abuse Kyle endured from his father. This wasn't just, a difficult weekend chore. It was an event where his very real physical limitations were weaponized against him into a literal form of torture. Let's break down exactly how this happened, because this wasn't a brief incident. It was a prolonged, calculated escalation. It started with his father possessing clear, undeniable knowledge of Kyle's severe hay fever allergy. Then came the forced labor, which was made even worse by forcing him to wear a mask that merely trapped the allergens inside. This led to the deep inhalation of grass for hours on end. And the darkest part? It wasn't until Kyle experienced total, complete physical incapacitation that the task was finally called off.
Okay, Section 3. Sadism disguised as discipline, masking the torment. The stark contrast here exposes the trauma perfectly. Outside observers who are, say, trapped in that ecosystem of avoidance we talked about, they might just see a normal suburban chore meant to build character and responsibility. But the reality was a mundane task entirely weaponized into physical torment. His father pretended not to know the severity of the allergy, essentially masking pure childhood sadism as mere parental discipline.
To put that into perspective, Kyle experienced a literal and metaphorical inability to breathe. We're talking about a profound emotional betrayal by a parent, combined with being physically suffocated inside a mask, while his father feigned total ignorance. Having to earn mercy only when your body entirely gives out, that fundamentally breaks a child's understanding of safety. Let's look at Section 4, suppressed boundaries and leaky energy. Because you have to wonder, how does a child process a parent intentionally weaponizing their own environment against them when there is literally nowhere else to turn?
Kyle actually coined this specific terminology to explain the exact consequence of trauma when a child's boundaries are utterly suppressed and ignored. When you're forced to endure that kind of physical pain and your ability to advocate for yourself is completely denied, that anger doesn't just disappear, right? It turns into what he calls leaky energy. It festers and eventually bleeds out into relationships in toxic, destructive ways.
Without the proper emotional attunement to process an ordeal like that, this unaddressed childhood pain totally transforms. A lack of unconditional support and healthy mentoring means that festering anger just bleeds into future relationships. Instead of guidance, you end up with sabotage, which ultimately compounds into this ongoing cycle of abuse.
And this loops right back to his profound macro-level realization. Our societal systems intentionally fail to equip us to handle these deep boundary violations because society doesn't teach emotional attunement that suppressed anger doesn't just vanish into thin air. It loops, it festers, and it leaks outward into everything else.
Finally, Section 5, confronting the trauma loop. Let's look at the universal takeaway here.
Here's exactly why all this matters.
And what you should really take away from this explainer today, we absolutely must stop turning away from raw pain. If we continue to indulge our involuntary reflex to escape when we see suffering, we remain complicit in the whole shebang. Ignoring sadistic behavior that's disguised as normalcy, that just perpetuates the leaky energy that is currently poisoning our society.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to challenge how you interact with the toxic ecosystems of avoidance around you. If our systems are built to look away, what hidden traumas are we allowing to thrive unchecked in our own backyards? Are we just looking at a normal chore, or are we willfully ignoring something much, much darker? Thank you for exploring this intense but vital topic with me today. Stay curious and keep questioning the systems around you.